Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Police response becomes the center focus of the investigation into a mass shooting in Texas, which left 21 dead, including more than a dozen fourth graders. And Kevin Spacey in more hot water as the actor faces new sexual assault charges across the pond. Plus,
Mr. Depp does not deserve to be known as the representative of perpetrators of abuse. That is what this case is about. It's not about money. It's about giving Mr. Depp his life back.
attorneys make their final plea in rebuttal closings in the defamation lawsuit and counterclaim case between exes Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. But first, what are the jury's options when it comes to deciding the case of Depp versus Heard? We're live in Fairfax, Virginia. Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome, everybody, to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Jesse Weber in for Brian Bachmeyer. After weeks of testimony, a verdict could be just around the corner in the high-profile defamation case between exes Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy joins us from outside the courthouse in Fairfax County, Virginia, with a breakdown of what jurors are discussing inside the deliberation room. Anjanette?
Well, Jesse, we can tell you that the jury actually has gone home for the evening. On Monday, they deliberated from about 9 a.m. until about 5 p.m. on Monday. So that was in addition to the 2 hours that the jurors deliberated on Friday afternoon. So the jury has a number of questions that they must answer when considering whether or not Amber Heard defamed Johnny Depp when she wrote that 2018 Washington Post op-ed. The headline was about sexual violence, you'll recall, and Judge Ascarati actually took a question from the jurors about that sexual violence headline in the op-ed, and she consulted with attorneys for both sides, of course, before sending the answer back to the jury.
The question is, does question number 3, the statement is false, pertain to the headline, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath, or does it pertain to the content of the statement, everything written in the op-ed? So I think the confusion came in this particular one because the statement in question is the title of the op-ed. So I think they're just confused as whether it's the whole op-ed or just the title is the statement. And it's clear that the title is the statement. So I was going to answer to say the title is the statement in question for number 3. Does that seem appropriate to everybody?
Okay, and now you have to recall that the jurors are also considering a counterclaim filed against Johnny Depp by Amber Heard. In that counterclaim, she alleges that Depp's attorney, Adam Waldman, defamed her when he made comments to the Daily Mail back in 2020 in which he called her claims of physical and sexual abuse a hoax. He said that she and her friends used these abuse claims as both a sword and a shield, and so the jury is considering whether or not Depp defamed Heard, and when Waldman made those statements as Depp's agent back in 2020. Jesse?
Anjanette, I think that question from the jury is fascinating. I mean, we've been covering the case together. What do you think that means in terms of what the jury's thinking?
You know, they could just be going through the instructions, Jesse. You know, we've been sitting here, Stacey Delicat and I today, thumbing through these jury instructions, 37 pages or so, liability issues, republication, you name it, it's all in there along with the verdict form. So they could just be going through these page by page and trying to outline things. What does this mean? What does that mean? And maybe they were just confused. Should we take that sexual violence headline and consider it on its own or as part of the larger op-ed? So it could just be as simple as that. You know,
Anjanette, I'm looking around you this Tuesday after the Memorial Day weekend. It is a scene that looks a lot different than we've seen previously. What does it look like right now?
Well, much different, Jesse. You know, when we were here you and I were together here last week, and we've both been here throughout this trial. Lots of Depp fans, right? Lots of Depp fans. We've talked about the line for the wristbands. It was terrible. This morning when I got here before 7 a.m., the line was basically non-existent. So a lot of those fans have gone, and now there's a slew of media behind me, international press, press from some of the big networks, the national news networks and things like that. So they are all here waiting with us for the verdict.
But Law and Crime has been there every day. We've been covering this trial every day, and I'm glad we're able to bring that to our viewers. Anjanette, stick around. Thank you so much for the great reporting. Have more questions for you. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Jurors hear one final plea from attorneys as Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's teams present rebuttal closing arguments. Then later, after a gunman fatally shoots 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers in Texas, the law enforcement response to the mass shooting is being questioned. Welcome back, everybody. Continuing our coverage of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation trial. Before the jury was sent back for deliberations Friday, both Depp and Heard's team was able to get in one final word before the jury in the rebuttal closing arguments. Depp's attorney, Camille Vasquez, ended the rebuttal by posing one final question.
Ms. Heard cannot run away from her own allegations now. You have all heard the evidence of what she alleged against Mr. Depp in 2016, and you have all heard her incredibly dramatic, over-the-top story of physical and sexual abuse. That story was a defamatory lie. Ms. Heard does not deserve to be known as a representative of survivors of abuse. And Mr. Depp does not deserve to be known as a representative of perpetrators of abuse. That is what this case is about. It's not about money. It's about giving Mr. Depp his life back. While you deliberate, ask yourselves why Mr. Depp would put himself through this. Expose every embarrassing detail of his life on national television. If he was guilty of anything that Ms. Heard accuses him of. We ask you, we implore you, to render a verdict for Mr. Depp. We ask you to set the record straight, that he is not the abuser she described, and that she is not the heroic survivor she portrayed. And we ask you to tell Ms. Heard that what she did was wrong.
And as for Heard, her attorneys had just minutes left in their allotted time to argue their final points Friday. J. Benjamin Rottenborn asked jurors to find in favor of Heard, arguing witness testimony and evidence back up her claims of abuse.
It's this simple. If you believe that Depp was abusive to Amber one time ever, in any of the various forms of abuse, not only physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, any of the ways of abuse, then your job is very easy. And you can not only deny Mr. Depp's claim, but you can find for Amber on her counterclaim. And it's interesting that Ms. Vasquez just changed their theory after 6 weeks. She said, oh, well, domestic abuse just means physical abuse. It's not what Mr. Depp said. It's not what Dr. Curry said. It's not what Dr. Hughes said. It's not what you know to be true. You know that the evidence that you've seen constitutes all sorts of abuse. We ask, ladies and gentlemen, that you hold Mr. Depp accountable for his actions. Stand up for victims of domestic abuse everywhere who suffer in silence. Stand up for the freedom of speech, the freedom to speak about your life that the First Amendment protects. Give Amber Heard her voice back. Give Amber Heard her life back.
Let's break it down. Anjanette's back with us from Fairfax County Courthouse. Also joining us today is former prosecutor Melba Pearson and co-host Terry Austin. Welcome to everybody. Melba, I'll start with you. So if the jury finds that Heard didn't defame Depp, right, on his claim, how likely is it will they find that Depp, through his attorney Adam Waldman, defamed her in the counterclaim?
That's a distinct possibility, Jesse, and always great to be on with you here on Law and Crime. But, you know, at the end of the day, the verdict can come back in almost a split format. So, in other words, they find in favor of Amber and Heard and say that she did not defame Johnny Depp. They may still rule and say that Johnny Depp's attorney defamed her, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to attach a monetary judgment to it. So her counterclaim is $50 million. The jury could come back giving her $50 million. They can come back giving her $1, something symbolic. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this ends up being broken down at the end of the deliberation.
No doubt, Terry, there's a lot for the jury to consider. I mean, Amber Heard claimed that Depp beat her repeatedly. Do you think there's one incident that maybe really stands out, that he could have physically or sexually assaulted her?
Well, I think the jury is going to look at all of these incidents and say, you know, she lied about one, she probably lied about them all. The only one incident that did have some corroboration was the incident where her makeup artist came and tended to her injuries and put makeup on her. Now, frankly, the makeup artist can't say where those injuries came from, and she did say she did not see Depp hit Amber Heard, but I did think that witness was credible.
And Jeanette, my understanding is we've had a development that Depp's team has moved for a revised jury instruction. They took issue with something that happened during closings.
That's right, Jesse. They filed a motion on Tuesday morning for a curative instruction. They wanted Judge Ascarati to tell the jury basically that they felt that Ben Rottenborn, during his closing argument, made some sort of inappropriate comment in which he said basically, your verdict is going to send a message to all victims of domestic violence. Basically, if you find for Johnny Depp, it's going to send this terrible message to all of these victims of domestic violence and these survivors. So they wanted a curative instruction on that, and they filed a motion for that. But Judge Ascarati, when she answered the jurors' questions, she brought this up and addressed it, and she said, look, you know, it's already in the jury's hands. It's basically too late. So she did not take up the motion or grant it.
And look, that was a really powerful moment in his closing argument, so it'll be interesting to see, you know, if they actually consider that, because, you know, the idea of what a alleged survivor should do or not do has been a difficult question that we've been answering in a lot of these kind of sexual assault cases. And Jeanette Levy, thank you so much. Great reporting, as always, from Fairfax County, Virginia. And a new development in the case of Idaho Doomsday cult duo Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell, as a motion to move the start of Lori's trial is granted. Chad and Lori reportedly met in 2018 through mutual beliefs about the end of the world, while Chad was still married to his first wife, Tammy Daybell. The pair now face first-degree murder charges for the deaths of Lori's two children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and for the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy, whose death was initially determined to be from natural causes. J.J. and Tylee were last seen on September of 2019, but Lori and Chad never reported them missing. Police say the couple fled out of state before the kids' remains were found on Chad's property 9 months after their disappearance. Lori was initially declared mentally unfit to stand trial, but that has since changed. Lori was set to go on trial in October, but the judge delayed her case to preserve a single trial. The two will face the death penalty in their joint trial scheduled to begin in January. And in California, the second Theranos trial focused on Elizabeth Holmes' former business partner and boyfriend, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, has been postponed. This as Holmes is asking for a judge to overturn her conviction. Balwani faces several federal charges, accused of defrauding investors and customers after touting Theranos as a revolutionary breakthrough technology in blood testing. Prosecutors seek to convince a jury that Balwani conspired with Holmes to scam investors out of millions of dollars while he served as the company's COO. Holmes was convicted in January of 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud in relation to Theranos' downfall. Now Holmes is asking a judge to overturn the jury's decision, saying there was insufficient evidence to convict. Holmes is set to be sentenced in September. She faces up to 20 years in prison. No reason was given for the delay in Balwani's trial, but it is expected to start back up June 7th. And coming up on Law and Crime Daily, 2-time Oscar winner actor Kevin Spacey facing more allegations of sexual misconduct. Plus, after a gunman opens fire in a 4th grade classroom, questions surround the police response to the Uvalde, Texas shooting. Now the Department of Justice is stepping in to investigate. Welcome back, everybody. Actor Kevin Spacey is facing sexual misconduct allegations once again. The award-winning actor faces charges in the United Kingdom. The charges were announced last week, consisting of 4 counts of sexual assault against 3 men and 1 charge of causing a person to engage in penetrative sexual activity without consent. The alleged incidents happened while Spacey served as the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre in London. The 62-year-old cannot be formally charged unless he enters either England or Wales. Spacey's spokesman tells media outlets that the actor does plan to travel to Britain to defend himself, saying he's confident he can prove his innocence. If Spacey does not travel to the UK voluntarily, British authorities would formally extradite him to the United States. This isn't the two-time Academy Award winner's first time running with sexual assault allegations. He's faced more than a dozen sexual misconduct allegations since 2017, one of which was accusations of making unwanted sexual advances towards Ren star Anthony Rapp in the 1980s when he was just 14 years old. Shortly after, Spacey issued a lengthy apology on social media. After Rapp's allegations were made public, at least 20 people who worked with Spacey in London accused him of inappropriate behavior. So, Melba, the question is, and I know you're not an expert in UK law, but why do you think that these charges are coming out now? And do you think it's going to be a tough case to prosecute?
Well, this is definitely part and parcel of the Me Too movement, where survivors of sexual abuse, of assault, are feeling more empowered. And also, we've seen the evolution of how people look at abuse and are moving away from blaming survivors, and also views on people being gay have evolved as well. So I think now that these gentlemen are older, they're a little bit more settled in their careers. They may have been able to go through therapy and work through the trauma. They are now able to come forward and feel comfortable, more comfortable, not that they will be comfortable, but more comfortable in speaking about these allegations. It will be tough due to how long it's been. I mean, we're talking 10 years plus. But then again, if their memories are very solid and can match up with other testimony, that would be the way for a successful prosecution.
Right. Seeing similarities with other cases as well. Terry, why do you think Spacey is returning to the UK voluntarily? It's a very curious thing to do.
You know, I think if he had a conversation with his attorneys, they probably came to the conclusion that really they're not going to win on that type of argument. The extradition agreement between the UK and US is a very solid agreement. There's no question that the U.S. is going to say, yes, you may have, Kevin Spacey. And so they probably decided not to do it. Plus, Jesse, if he voluntarily goes on his own, he can figure out a schedule. He can work with the UK authorities, and it'll be a whole lot easier for him, for his team, to go to the trial and to work out. And he says he thinks he's going to win, so he's saying he has nothing to be afraid of. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted to be taken against his will and extradited over there. And from an optics point of view, he's saying, hey, listen, I got nothing to hide. I get it. So we'll see how that plays out. When we come back, law enforcement under fierce scrutiny after a mass shooting left 21 people dead, including 19 fourth graders. Why police response to the Uvalde school shooting is under a microscope. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily, everybody. Anger is growing after a mass shooting took the lives of 19 elementary students and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas, as the Department of Justice says it will investigate the police response to the incident. Last week, officials say 18-year-old Salvador Ramos shot and injured his grandmother before crashing into his truck into a ditch near Robb Elementary School. Authorities say Ramos entered the school building through a propped open door. Several police officers entered the building minutes later, but they waited outside the classroom. After 77 minutes, a tactical team entered the room and fatally shot the gunman. 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers were killed in the rampage. Texas officials and law enforcement have been under intense scrutiny about how the shooting was handled. The incident has also prompted renewed calls for gun control measures. The DOJ says the investigation aims to, quote, provide an independent account of law enforcement actions and responses that day and to identify lessons learned and best practices to help first responders prepare for and respond to active shooter events. Funerals are scheduled throughout the week to lay the victims to rest. So, Melba, I'll start with you. What exactly can the DOJ do here? What powers, authority do they have? I mean, what can they do after they investigate?
Well, let's start with this. First of all, I definitely want to center the victims and their families that they've left behind, because no matter what the DOJ does, they will never be able to bring those poor souls back. So we start with that. But what they can do is bring to light the failures that occurred on that day. And that report that they will eventually issue can be used, number one, within the Texas legislature or by the governor to be able to guide what should happen to law enforcement moving forward. It can be a tool if, for instance, the police chief of Uvalde is elected, or if he's appointed. This could result in the removal from his position because there's evidence in that report that shows he was, engaged in malfeasance in some way, shape, or form. If there are systemic problems that the DOJ finds within the department, they could go the route of a consent decree, which means that changes and overhaul would have to happen within the department, and the DOJ oversees and supervises that process by assigning a monitor. That seems to happen a lot within police shooting cases. So something like that could happen here as well.
Okay, so it has some teeth. But Terry, it sounds like we're also agreeing that there was a failure to follow police policy and protocol. Do you think that there is a potential for civil litigation here as well?
Absolutely. I think that there will be civil litigation. And as Melba said, that doesn't mean that it'll bring anyone back, obviously, but it will send a message. Here, there was many failures to follow the protocol. It was a active shooter, not a barricaded suspect, as the police were thinking. They should not have waited over an hour. There were at least 8 calls from inside the school, including children. They really should have gone in. They should have put their lives behind the lives of the children. The children's lives should have come first. And so I do think that we're going to see lawsuits out of this. They should have gone in and confronted that attacker, and they failed to follow their own manual. So we'll see what happens, but I think there will be litigation. And
a lot of people want answers for what happened there. Melba, Terry, thank you so much. Everyone out there, thanks for joining us here on Law&Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.